Beautiful. Oh, hello again. What? I'm Tethysaurus, Yorkshire. What else am I going to be drinking? So, back at it again with part 5 of Introduction to Mosasaurs, and I thought I'd finish off this sort of series with that fella up there. Or fellerette, or lass, just could be anything. Could be boy or girl, you never know. So yeah, we're going to talk about Tethysaurus nopcsai, the mosasaur that solidified my paleontological journey. So first up, bit of basics. I'm like Roman Reigns here, I'm sat at the head of the table.
Acknowledge me!
So yeah, Tethysaurus is a mosasaur, and specifically is a basal russellosaurinate mosasaur. Now, Tethysaurinae composes of two species of mosasaur at the moment, Tethysaurus nopcsai itself and its relative Pannoniasaurus from Hungary. However, it's also the sister taxa to the Jaguarosaurinae, which contains Jaguarosaurus, Russellosaurus and Romeosaurus. Still, no Julietsaurus, still trying to find her. However, it should be noted that several publications have also noted the fragmentary remains of other Tethysaurinae, particularly those in the Tethyan realm during the same time as Tethysaurus, including one example of a freshwater Campanian Tethysaurinae that could be about as old as 72 million years ago, so this means that the Tethysaurinae extended for nearly 20 million years. That's a long time, but these remains are still quite fragmentary, so we don't know if they actually all belong to Tethysaurinae. Anyways, more Tethysaurus. So now we've gone through some of the family basics, let's get into the material of Tethysaurus. Tethysaurus nopcsai was described in 2003 by Bardet et al. It was found in the Akrabou Formation of Morocco in the High Atlas Mountains. Now, these rocks date from about 94 to about 89 million years ago, so Tethysaurus actually possibly lived about 5 million years. But we need more specimens to actually confirm that, so maybe about 1 or 2 million years is more reasonable. The holotype specimen is this beautiful skull that is almost complete and pretty much articulated. Now, Tethysaurus material has actually been known for a very, very long time by both paleontologists and the locals in the High Atlas Mountains, where miners actually went out and collected fossils of not just Tethysaurus, but a whole abundance of different marine animals. For example, this is a picture I got off of Facebook of a nearly complete Tethysaurus. It's got the skull, it's got most of the spinal cord, it's just missing some of the limbs. It's a pretty good specimen. Now, a bit of a fun fact, but the rocks that Tethysaurus sits in, the Akrabou Formation, actually sits above the Kem beds, so Tethysaurus actually moved in where Spinosaurus used to swim. And in fact, Spinosaurus' extinction was because of the ever-encroaching environment of Tethysaurus. So, around the time that Tethysaurus was actually alive, about 94 million years ago, the world was experiencing a sea level rise. This meant that the former deltaic environments which Spinosaurus used to habitate in North Africa actually became an epicontinental ocean. This is basically just a shallow ocean that is vast for miles. It literally went out for miles and miles and miles, and this was a fantastic environment for the newly evolving mosasaurs, like Tethysaurus. And it was a very abundant environment. In fact, you had a whole plethora of different fishes, including sharks, you had pycnodonts, you even had a marine gar. And do not forget the ammonites. The ammonites were absolutely plentiful in this marine environment, including the biozone ammonite that we use, Mammites. It's incredibly bumpy. I hope it's not got warts. I don't want to catch that, especially from something that's been dead for millions of years. There was even these bowling ball ones. I mean, I'd love to get one of these and just bowl it down a bowling alley. Yeah, I think it'd be brilliant. Don't you? Unfortunately, Tethysaurus had a bit of competition. In the Akrabou Formation, there's actually quite a few plesiosaurs, including this fella, Libanectes, which stretch all the way from Morocco to North America. There was also some of those polycotylid plesiosaurs, the sort of short-necked, long-faced plesiosaurs, and they were quite plentiful. There's quite a few species in the Akrabou Formation. Now, while Libanectes and some of these polycotylid plesiosaurs were probably the main competition of Tethysaurus, there was one apex predator that Tethysaurus probably had to avoid. And that was this fella, Brachiochenius. Now, Brachiochenius has a global distribution from North America all the way to North Africa, so this was a dominant pliosaur predator. Now, Brachiochenius could achieve a size between about 7 to 9 meters in length. This was a monster pliosaur, and a 3 to 4 meter long Tethysaurus had no chance in competing with this predator. I mean, occasionally, probably a Tethysaurus, whether it be a juvenile or an adult, probably fell victim to big old bra here. Bra. Bra. So, here's a bit of a fun story. From late December 2018 to early January 2019, I actually went on an expedition into Morocco. And I basically saw everything from the Moroccan trilobites to areas where you could find Spinosaurs, the lot. But I was pretty focused on doing a project on Tethysaurus, this so-called mystery mosasaur that I'd heard about. And yes, these are my specimens. And yeah, the area where we were finding these fossils was absolutely gorgeous and was actually in the sort of valley of a river. And basically, I used my fossils for my final year project at university. In fact, I based a reconstruction off them. So this specimen that I'm sat on top of is my girl, Tethysaurus. Now, Tethysaurus was a disarticulated Tethysaurus that I actually got from Morocco, and she possibly represents an adult of about 2.4 meters in length based on my estimates. And this little fella here is Titus, which is a jaw section of a slightly larger Tethysaurus based on my estimates. Although it is just a jaw section, it could be a much smaller individual, but leave me alone! So, into a bit more of the anatomy of Tethysaurus. Now, as we discussed in previous videos, Tethysaurus is what we call a plesiopedal plesiopelvic mosasaur. This means that this animal had terrestrial-like limbs that could have still maybe dragged it onto land. However, its hips had reduced and actually become more adapted for an aquatic lifestyle. So even though Tethysaurus had these terrestrial-like limbs, it's more likely that this animal actually spent its entire time in the water, its whole life. Now, this isn't actually surprising because the agalosaurs based on Carzosaurus show evidence of live birthing in the water, so Tethysaurus was more than capable of living in the water full time. And that's not the only anatomy in Tethysaurus that started to change. A thesis from 2017 actually showed some interesting adaptations of Tethysaurus's endocast. Ullman 2017 actually showed that Tethysaurus, alongside the contemporaneous plesiosaurs it lived alongside, were actually using vision more than the sense of smell to actually track their prey. Now, since mosasaurs are squamates and therefore closely related to snakes and monitor lizards, they would have had a forked tongue, so it would have been... That was a terrible impression, but anyways, my point, they would have been tasting not the air, but the water. They would have been tasting the water. However, if this is true, Tethysaurus relied more on its eyes than its nose. And based on the fact that it didn't have flippers like the plesiosaurs, Tethysaurus was likely to be an ambush predator rather than a pursuit predator like the plesiosaurs were. So while the plesiosaurs were going after the faster shoals of fish, Tethysaurus might have been going after slower fish or even injured or straggling fish from the plesiosaur chase. But wait, there's more! In 2017, Gale et al. Described a bitten ammonite from the Acroboo formation. And in fact, this ammonite was bitten by a Tethysaurus. Based on the size of the bite, the Tethysaurus that bit this, based on my estimates, was only about 1.5 meters in length, was probably a juvenile. So whilst this was probably a predatory event, it probably wasn't a successful predatory event. Yeah, that wasn't a good idea, Tethysaurus. I mean, I'm surprised you bit through the shell. In fact, here's some reconstructions I did of some of the Tethysaurus specimens we know of. This includes several animals, including the holotype and a slightly larger specimen that was referred to Tethysaurus in the same paper that described it, including some juvenile specimens that were described in 2010 by Bardet and Hasse. In fact, some of the isolated material from some of these specimens helped us understand some of the internal bone structure of Tethysaurus. As I mentioned in the videos previously, early mosasaurs seem to show a lot of pachyostosis or thickening of the bone. This counteracts air in the lungs, which actually creates buoyancy. And when you're a marine animal, you don't want to be floating about because 1, you can't swim, and 2, that makes you too obvious of a prey item. Especially to hungry sharks or Brachylcenius. Oh, look at her. So right there, Tethysaurus is sat on my mosasaur shelf. But what exactly happened to Tethysaurus? Well, she probably lived a pretty good life, and then after that, she maybe died peacefully. In fact, I've come up with a model of how I think she was actually deposited. So first, her body cavity would have bloated, and then she would have floated out to sea, possibly with her limbs falling off, that's why we can't find the limbs. Next, she probably burst, and therefore sunk to the bottom. It probably would have stank. As her body was on the bottom of the epicontinental ocean, a lot of marine life probably would have fed on her, including plesiosaurs and fish. Then she would have been slowly buried by sediment and fossilized in the rock for me to come and find. And now she's on my shelf. And there is where we're going to end the introduction of mosasaurs. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Stay tuned.